lectionary scriptures are on the back. This is one of those rare times where it's actually on the front. I'm only preaching one verse from the Luke reading, and it's right on the front. You don't even have to turn it around. It's just staring you right in the face. Luke, verse 27, whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. I want to talk to you this morning from the subject, Christianity's required course. Christianity's required course. I recall my sophomore year at the University of Nebraska. One of the most popular courses offered, especially among the athletes, myself included, was human sexuality. As 18, 19, and 20-year-olds respectively, we did not place much analysis on anything beyond the name. We did not read the syllabus. We didn't know what was required. Therefore, we had little idea of the exact nature of the course. We just knew we would be given credit for a class that talked about sex for 90 minutes 3 times a day. 3 times a week. Looking back in retrospect, I realized that particular course, which by the way failed to meet our expectations, was an elective. In order to take human sexuality, one had to first take and pass Biology 101. See, Biology 101 was the required course. That was the course necessary for graduation. Human sexuality was the elective. It was an optional course that we could have selected among many alternatives. Biology was required. Human sexuality was an elective. Now I realize that seems like a rather unusual way to begin this morning's message, but it illustrates a theological point as well. While oftentimes we take stands, and dare I say the stands we take are often based on biblical electives rather than what's required. I understand the validity of Moses. Let my people go. I often embrace the poetry of David. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. I can hear Paul's letter sometime with visceral, gut-wrenching emotion. Brothers and sisters, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are to come, I press toward the mark of the high calling of God, which is in Christ Jesus. Those and many others I quote all the time. But for followers of Jesus, the words of these individuals in the final analysis in terms of your faith journey are but electives. While the words and the teachings of the one known as Jesus of Nazareth, that is the required text. And that's what we've come to talk about this morning. Christianity's required course. What are the courses that we must take to not only receive a passing grade, but to graduate with all rights, privileges thereunto and pertaining? But there is something about the human condition that makes the electives more appealing than the required courses. Just as we at the University of Nebraska were far more interested in taking human sexuality than taking biology, the church sometimes seems more interested in the electives than what's required. And as a result, historically, the electives have placed a portion of the church on the wrong side of human suffering. See, the electives taught the church, some of the church, that the Crusades were essential, slavery was justified, the Holocaust was crucial, and apartheid was necessary. Likewise, the electives taught the church that John Brown was a terrorist, Oscar Schindler was a traitor, Rosa Parks was an agitator, and Fannie Lou Hamer was a fool. How could the Church of Jesus the Christ have seeds addressing aid to poor children, military spending, stem cell research, education, labor and environmental protections, trade agreements, health care, a livable wage, or corporate welfare. But for followers of Jesus, we find in this text which is required of us. This should not be confused with what works for us, what's convenient for us, what feels good to us, or for that matter, that which we like. But this text is what is required of us. According to Jesus, this is something that we must do, something that we are compelled to do, something that we have no choice in the matter if you and I are going to self-identify as followers of his movement. Very simply, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. I don't know how much clearer that can be. Whoever doesn't bear his or her own cross cannot be my disciple. You can't if that, you can't but that, you can't however that, you can do that all you want if you want to, but if you don't pick up your cross and follow Jesus, you cannot be a disciple. Taking Paul out of context won't help you. David can't bail you out. Not even the amorphous the Bible says cannot aid you in this fact. If you want to be a disciple of Jesus, you are obligated to pick up your cross and follow him. There's no getting around it. According to Jesus, being one of his disciples is directly connected to that thing called the cross. This is not very different from what he said in Matthew's gospel. If anyone wants to be my disciple, deny yourselves, pick up your cross and follow me. Too often, carrying the cross represents some type of antiquated faith that frankly has become passé. For some, it represents a slave mentality whereby being a follower of Jesus is reduced to the joy of suffering. I suspect this has something to do with why those who prefer a gospel suggest that God will reward you with material wealth if you only believe. Because at first glance, there is nothing about the cross to celebrate. But know that the theology of this church is the theology of the cross. It is to be intentional about the fact that Good Friday always comes before Easter.
All right.
This is perhaps why we sing Jesus keep me near the cross rather than Jesus keep me near the grave. For it is the cross where wars transform into peace, hate morphed into love, hopelessness becomes hope, chaos is converted to tranquility, and tragedy is transmuted into triumph. The theology of the cross, originally attributed to Martin Luther as he nailed his 95 Theses at the church door in Wittenberg in 1517, which would launch the Protestant Reformation, is an instructive blueprint as to how followers of Jesus should engage in a fallen creation. At the heart of Luther's argument is his notion that human beings should not speculate about who God is or how God acts in a Christian context in advance of actually seeing and understanding who God has revealed God's self to be to each and every one of us.
Come on.
And that revelation takes us back not to an empty tomb, but to a cross on Calvary. See, the cross is where they seized one Simon of Cyrene who was on his way from the country and put the cross on his back. It made him carry behind Jesus who was already on his way to death. The cross is where they fastened a sign that read, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The cross is where his mother stood near as they pierced him in his side. The cross is where Jesus endured the brutal, suffocating process known as crucifixion. The cross represents the intersection of good and evil. The cross is where it appeared that evil would have the deciding vote on human affairs and the human adventure. cross is also the gateway to grace.
Come
The
on.
cross is the gateway to liberation. The cross is the direction by which followers of Jesus set their moral compass. The cross is where rivers are crossable, mountains are movable, hills are climbable. The cross is where freedom is achievable, truth is knowable, redemption is possible. The cross is where second chances are realized, hope is actualized, and the need for resurrection is finalized. You see, there is simply no way to get around it. Our connection to the cross is a necessary component to being a follower of Jesus. In fact, it is what is required of each and every one of us.
Come on, preach.
Our individual stands on abortion based on the Bible is an elective. Our individual stand on the death penalty based on the Bible is an elective. Our individual stand on same-sex marriage based on the Bible is an elective. How you feel about stem cell research based on the Bible is an elective. But our collective need to carry our own cross in order to be considered a follower of Jesus is necessary, expected, and above all, it is required. If as followers of Jesus our faith journey is to be meaningful, beyond a few catchphrases, slogans, and random biblical passages that work for us, we must be willing, as the song says, carry the old rugged cross. But what does that mean beyond carrying a few burdens? Because the cross does represent one of the worst execution practices known to humankind. One's life will slowly ebb away through the painful process of suffocation. To carry one's cross in addition to the suffering was the humility one endured on the way to death. People would spit at you, mock you. A Roman centurion might strike you as you carried your own cross to your own death. We're also reminded that while Jesus hung dying on the cross, enduring an unjust pain for unjust reasons, he still forgave folk, he still blessed folk, he still comforted folk, he still loved folk, while in the midst of his own suffering, he engaged in the ultimate example of inconvenient love.
Ooh, my Lord, my Lord, my Lord.
I know that you can do these things when you're not in the midst of your own pain. But I hear Jesus saying to us in the text, can you do those things while you are still suffering? Can you love when others don't love you? Can you forgive when others don't forgive you? Can you be a blessing when others are not a blessing to you? It is with this in mind that I'd like to examine 3 reasons why carrying the cross is necessary and required. The first reason is the altitude of the cross. When Jesus was put on the cross, he was lifted high, and it allowed him to look down on those who, for the most part, were his enemies. Being high up, the cross allows us to change our perspective, to look at situations differently. The altitude of the cross, as painful as it might be, places us just a little closer to God. I know that being on the cross is painful. I know it can hurt. And yes, there is some suffering involved, but that does not mean, nor should it ever, that ours is a faith that is based on suffering. It is, however, a faith based on redemption. It is a faith based on grace. It is a faith based on second chances. It is a faith based on love. And it is a faith based on resurrection. Therefore, those who have fallen have a better appreciation for what it means to get up. Those who have endured suffering have a better appreciation for joy. Those who have been down in the valley have a better appreciation for the view that's on the mountain. And those who have hung on the cross have a better appreciation for the altitude while you're up there. Because it changes our perspective on life. We don't look at things at the same way. I know that carrying the cross is not easy, but it wasn't meant to be easy. And if you dare take